My name is Devan Cheaves, first name Devan, last name Cheaves, and my title is organizer.
With which group?
With Bay Area Activist Coalition, or BAAC, but also Tampa Dream Defenders as well.
Okay, excellent. So Friday night you have a community organization meeting in St. Petersburg.
Mm-hmm.
What is it and why?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're having a Know Your Rights workshop. It's the very first one that BAAC has been pushing and has put together. But it's going to be a workshop that's, we're starting in St. Pete, because Bay Area Activist Coalition is across the bay. But essentially what we're going to be doing is not only teaching people their rights, according to the 4th and 5th Amendments, Miranda rights, but also teaching students that they also have rights. So going over school searches and things like that. One of the initiatives that we have in BAAC is Kids Not Criminals, and we've been doing a lot of work around school to prison pipeline and just advocating for student rights. It's done a lot of work, and it has even influenced the Hillsborough County School Board with redoing the Student Bill of Rights. And so it's just kind of like an initiative of the Kids Not Criminals program to teach students their rights, and so that's what we're having tomorrow.
Where is it and when?
It's going to be at the Enoch Davis Center, which is 1111 18th Avenue South in St. Pete. And it's going to be from 5:30 to 8 p.m. So it's a long workshop, and it's definitely not the last of workshops. In fact, we're planning on doing additional workshops in St. Pete, and also doing some workshops in Tampa and maybe even Manatee County as well.
What is it that made you think that this was something that might be needed for the community?
Definitely. It's actually not my idea. Well, another organizer, Ashley Green, is kind of the one that brought it to the table, because we had been doing a lot of work with Kids Not Criminals and advocating about the school to prison pipeline, and just redirecting people's first impressions of kids. Especially with what's been happening in Tampa with the biking policy. Kids are getting citations and they need to know their rights, and so that kind of gave us the sense of urgency to host Know Your Rights workshop, Also, I think there isn't anybody in BAAC or in Dream Defenders that hasn't been touched by Sandra Bland. And she was someone who did know her rights, and because she knew her rights and her rights were violated, and we have that on film. It didn't save her from her demise, but it definitely is something that pushes us to teach the community at large that you do have rights. You should know them. And it may not save your life, but it's definitely something worth knowing.
And just to remind people, she was pulled over by a police officer in Texas, mm-hmm. and several days later was found dead in her jail cell.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm putting you a little bit on the spot here. We didn't talk about this earlier, but you mentioned the school to prison pipeline, and you're also talking about Pinellas County. There's a new investigation by the Tampa Bay Times finding that schools are being resegregated in Pinellas County, and that outcomes for African students are declining, mm-hmm. Especially in the most segregated schools.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see any connection between that and the workshop that you're doing?
Absolutely. I think I know St. Pete is home to five schools that are underperforming. Just in St. Pete. And I think what we're seeing now just across the nation with the Black Lives Matter movement, that's highlighting a lot of the things that are happening in our communities and have been happening for decades. I think this workshop is, again, all the more reason why we need to get people informed and show them that you do have power, you do have rights, and you do have a say. Let's turn our attention to what's happening with our schools and with our students. This isn't right. This isn't okay. Statistics, reports, and even just actual stories that you hear. We did a canvas yesterday in St. Pete at Sanderland, and we talked with young people who talked about being harassed by the police, like literally being followed, and that's just not right. Like, that's not. As a kid, you shouldn't have to worry about interactions with the police, whether they be deadly or not. You should be carefree. You should be able to just live your life. I feel like we're getting away from that, and kids are now having to worry about a citation for riding their bikes. That's crazy. For getting outside and being exercising and just being a kid. I think it definitely worries us, but it doesn't stop us, obviously, from continuing to do the work and continuing to invest in the community through knowledge and education and advocacy. So, yeah.
And finally, I want to ask, if someone can't make the workshop, are there 1 or 2 tips that you could give them that they could just take home just from listening to this story?
Absolutely. If you can't come, we're actually going to be giving out some handwritten materials, like actual sort of 8x5 cards for people to actually have in their cars to pull out if they do get stopped. Oh, these are my rights. But you don't have to present your ID if a police officer asks it. That sounds crazy. It's like, why wouldn't I give the police officer my ID if they ask for it? Well, you don't have to. If you're not being detained or arrested, you don't have to stay there. And you ask those questions: am I being detained? Am I being arrested? And if the answer is no, then you're free. You should be free to leave. And people need to know that. So those are just a couple of things that we're going to go over tomorrow at our workshop. And if you can't attend the workshop tomorrow, there will be others, not just in St. Pete, but also in Tampa. This is going to be an ongoing event that we're going to be putting together. And so there'll definitely be a next one.
Devan, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you very much.